The Milwaukee Bucks, since trading for Jrue Holiday all the way back in 2020, have been atop of the NBA standings basically all of the past 3 seasons since they've traded for Jrue, and they have been an extremely good team, having a combined record of 155 and 81 in the last 3 seasons, which is good enough for the second best record among those 3 seasons in the entire NBA, which is extremely good regular season success, and they've even seen a good amount of kind of playoff success as well. And to go along with that great record, they've also been a very good team on both sides of the ball, as 2 out of those last 3 seasons, they were top 10 in defensive efficiency, and even in the one season they were not, they were the 12th ranked team in defensive efficiency, so they've always been a very good defensive team, and then all 3 of those years, they were also a top 10 team in offensive efficiency as well. So they were a very good 2A level team for the past 3 years, and have been, like I said, one of the best, well-constructed rosters in the entire NBA, and in my opinion, you can almost consider them as a borderline super team. And if you just saw what their success rate was with their record, the combined record of the past 3 seasons, how good they were on both sides of the ball, and the talent pool they have on their roster, you would probably say the same thing. But unfortunately for them, they have been one of the most unlucky super teams basically in NBA history, despite how much success they have actually seen, as it did get off to a good start. In their first season together as a big 3 and the team was good, they were a very good team. They dominated their way through the entire playoffs in 2020 through 21. They beat the Phoenix Suns in 6 games in the NBA Finals, and things were looking great. Their first year together, they won the NBA Finals. They looked like they were set to be dominant for years and years to come, and people wouldn't be completely wrong by assuming that, but they also would not be completely right by assuming that either. As since that 2020 NBA Finals that they were able to win, they've had a string of very unfortunate circumstances going against them the past 2 seasons. As the very next season in 2021 through 2022, they actually improved their win total by 5 games, going a total of 51 and 31, and they were one of the best teams in the entire NBA once again, and they even dominated the Chicago Bulls in the first round of the playoffs that year, beating them 4-1, making it look like they were set up to be just as dominant as they were the year before in the playoffs, and they were set up for a lot of success. But unfortunately for them, they would run into the Boston Celtics in the second round, who were very young and very hungry, and they were able to kind of have a very good series. They went all the way to 7 games, and the Milwaukee Bucks unfortunately lost to the Boston Celtics. And you may be wondering what was unlucky about that. They just lost to the better team. But it's the fact that they were missing Chris Middleton, an all-star level player who's one of the better offensive players in the entire NBA. And they were able to still go 7 games against the Boston Celtics, the team who made the finals that year, and almost won it as well. I think they lost in 6 games in the finals. And that was a team they barely lost to without debatably their second best offensive player on the roster and second best player total on the roster. So there's a very real argument to be made that if the Milwaukee Bucks had Middleton in that series, they very much could have and probably would have beaten the Celtics that year and would have made it to at least the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would have then played the Miami Heat. And seeing that the Celtics beat the Heat in I think 7 games that year, but seeing that the Celtics were still able to beat them, I would imagine the Milwaukee Bucks probably would have had a good chance of beating the Heat as well. And I think they would have arguably had a better chance of beating the Warriors in the finals that year than the Boston Celtics actually did. So I think that was the first kind of strike in their unfortunate events that would follow, and that was just the first domino to fall, honestly, as things would even get worse from there. And that now brings us to this season and what happened with them this year. This year, they had almost an identical record at 50 and 32, and they once again finished at the top of the Eastern Conference as the #1 seed, and they did that despite Chris Middleton only playing in 33 games that season and only starting in 19 of them. And in those games where Middleton actually got to play, they were 25 and 8. So that when their big 3 got to play, they were absolutely dominant. Like, no one could touch them, basically. Like, they were the best team in the NBA, hands down, when their big 3 played, and even when Middleton was out, they were still an extremely good team. And going into the playoffs, they were a lot of people's finals favorites, including myself. I thought they could make it back and do their thing, and expectations were just extremely high for this Bucks team going into the first round of the playoffs. But unfortunately for them, they ran into the God-appointed Miami Heat and Jimmy Jesus himself when they played them, and on top of that, their best player, MVP of the league multiple times, Giannis would go down with a back injury after game 1. So yes, they did lose game 1 when Giannis was playing, but that was the game he got hurt his back, so no telling how much that was bothering him. And then they did win game 2 without Giannis. And that was a very, very big deal that they were able to do that despite Giannis being out. But then unfortunately, momentum went back to Miami in game 3 and forced them to go down 2-1 because Giannis had to miss his second game in a row. And let's be honest, if Giannis was playing in that game, no telling how much different that outcome could have been. So then that forced Giannis to have to rush back for games 3 and 4. And with a back injury, there's no way he was fully healthy. Even if they shot it up, he's not going to be playing at 100%. So even though Giannis played extremely well in those last 2 games, he probably was not 100%. And that injury had a huge problem with them. And the second you give Miami Heat hope, like putting them up 2-1 in a series, you pretty much writ your deathbed, because Miami Heat are the most resilient team in almost NBA history, as even though, like I said, Giannis came back for those games 3 and 4, they would go on to lose to the 8th seeded Miami Heat once again. But some multiple unfortunate things happened. Like I said, obviously the Giannis injury was a ginormous blow, probably one of the most unlucky things. You were dominant in the regular season, you couldn't even be touched basically. When your big 3 was healthy, you barely lost 8 games, okay? Like, you were dominant. And then of course, after game 1 of the playoffs, your best player gets injured. That's just tragic. But then on top of that, that now marks back-to-back seasons where they had to play a series against the team that made the NBA Finals out of the East. So they're getting extremely hard matchups very early on in the playoffs, which is just extremely unfortunate. And like I said earlier, to make things even more unfortunate, it looked like the Miami Heat were just blessed by God this year and could not do anything wrong until the NBA Finals. And they just became a team possessed and looked unstoppable. So that was multiple very unfortunate circumstances the Milwaukee Bucks had to go through, which ultimately led them to losing 4-1 in the first round of the playoffs as a 1 seed. And now going into next season, they are pretty much sitting in the exact same spot they've always been for the past 3 years. The only negative is that they're getting older. Jrue Holiday is not getting any younger. Now, yes, he's still an elite two-way level player, one of the better ones in the entire NBA, especially from a guard perspective, but he himself has said he doesn't have that much longer, most likely, and that is very, very true, and they need to take advantage of this window immediately, and to do that, they need to get lucky when it comes to their injury history. I don't know what they need to do. I don't know if they need to pray more, they need to eat more fruit, I don't know what they need to do, but they got to do something, because when they're healthy, like we saw last year, they are dominant, and they are probably the best team in the NBA. Their only problem is they're never that healthy, and they're always never that healthy in the most important moments of the NBA. They just need to focus on being healthy for the playoffs. Fuck the regular season. Just make the playoffs, be healthy for it, and you'll be good. But they just need to find a way to be able to do that, because even outside of their big 3, they have an elite levelly built team. Brook Lopez is one of the better role-playing bigs in the entire NBA. They have guys like Jay Crowder, Malik Beasley, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, just tons of great role players, Grayson Allen, you can keep naming them. You just need to have your stars healthy for the playoffs, and if you can do that, I think they can win the finals once again. But unfortunately, guys, that's more for this video, so comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think that the Milwaukee Bucks can win the finals? Do you think they're unlucky? I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like the point, like button, subscribe button, and the absolute word to me, and hope you have a blessed day. Could I have a blessed day? So you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.